Hello and welcome to another fantastic day. Whew, I am so excited to see everybody here, and I am glad you made the time to watch this video. Today is another episode of Reinvent to Rise. I am going to start sharing my screen in a second, and I hope you can all follow through. What are we talking about today? We are talking about the art of pivoting. It's so crucial for us to go through all our learning content before we begin our challenge in just a few days. For those of you who have taken the time to join, I am super delighted that you are thinking about pivoting. Now, somebody might say, why are we talking about pivoting? What has that got to do with anything? Well, for those of you who have never had to pivot in your life, this is an opportunity to understand that pivoting is a crucial and a particular part of life. Now, what is the pivoting mindset? I mean, what is it? What is it about? When we say pivots, a lot of people think about it as something that is so drastic and so monumental, and it takes a lot of energy to do. But guess what? Pivoting can be on a small scale and it can be on a large scale, right? It's basically the art of shifting, okay, from fearful to opportunistic thinking. Now, for many of you, you might be wondering, well, okay, fearful to opportunistic thinking. Am I supposed to think in an opportunistic way? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And today, I want to share a couple of stories with you about people that have done this art of pivoting. I have been privileged in my life to pivot at least 10 different times. And for each opportunity that I have had, it has been to pivot to the next level, to the next phase of my career, to the next phase of something that I had desired. So to you today, I want you to understand that we're going to be talking about the mindset and the strategic steps to make a major life shift effectively and fast, especially if you're thinking about doing this in your career. We will also tackle common doubts that keeps people stuck, keeps us stuck and gives you, and we're going to look at the concrete actions that you can take to begin your pivot. Thank you, everybody that gave us feedback from last week and the week before, from last week's session. I'm going to try and be a bit slower today. So I'm looking back to feedback. If you think, you want this to go faster, but I want to make sure that people are getting the key points as we discussed. And I'm glad to see that some of you are already in the room. I would like to share a specific framework. And this framework is a framework that I discovered works a lot for when you want a quick pivot, when you want to move quickly. And so the first stage of this framework is going to be the reflection stage. What happens in the reflection stage? Well, before we go deep into the reflection stage. I want you, if you're watching right now, to ask yourself one question. What area of your life do you want to pivot in? What area of your life do you want to pivot in? Just take a minute. For those who were here last week and joined the call, you've obviously had a whole week to reflect on it. Thank you for all the comments in the chat. That's super encouraging. And then, yes, let's start. Reflection. The art of reflection is something that I learned many, many years ago. And at the beginning, I had thought, why do you have to reflect so much? I was taking a hobby course for counseling and psychotherapy. And it had nothing to do with my profession. It had nothing to do with what I was doing in my day-to-day work. But it had to do with the volunteer job that I was doing. I was volunteering somewhere on Sundays, and I needed to know that I wasn't leading people astray, so I took this course. And during that course, my mind was opened to the power of reflection. A lot of us don't do it. A lot of us think we reflect, but in the busy world that we live in today, we really honestly do not. And that was one thing I learned during that course, because we would sit down in a round table, right, at the beginning of class, and then we'll be paired up as counselors to ask each other questions in different roles. So we would role play. And for every time that we did it, we were asked to reflect. We were asked to reflect on how we answered if you were the one playing the counselor role. And we were asked to reflect as patients, as the person who had come to see the counselor. And one of the critical things we found out, I personally discovered, is that I could have gone through a whole day without any deep level reflection. Because Wednesdays became a time that I looked forward to then, because that was the one day where we had a 2-hour training. And for each role play session we had, each one of us was expected to reflect for 10 minutes. That was hard for me the first time. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, I reflect for a minute or two and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've thought about it. And then later I discovered that the more I learned about the art of reflection, the more I began to understand that through reflecting, I could self-audit. Through reflection, I could take inventory of my strengths, my weaknesses. And through reflection, I could also conduct mindset checks. It was very, very liberating. Very liberating. And after that, as I began to go into practice and I began to use these skills in my everyday life, I just found out that the ability to stop and reflect is so critical. And I want to share that with you today. So I'm going to keep quiet for a minute, a full minute. I'm putting my timer on, and I want you to reflect for 1 minute. List your current frustrations. 1 minute, list your current frustrations. All right. Identify your transferable skills and the new capabilities that you would like to develop, or the new business or venture you would like to start. Another minute for that. Write down if you can, or put it in the chat. And then mindset check. Think about the things in your mindset that could possibly be holding you back. Okay, right. So we're going to go to the next thing on the framework I'm sharing with you, and that is the research stage. The research stage. I can see that there are people already putting into the chat. I can see frustration. Time is the frustration. Okay. Transferable skills, critical thinking, flexibility, fast learning, mindsets holding me back. There's just too much to do. Thanks for sharing. We're going to take questions at the bottom of the hour. So I'm going to quickly run through this framework for us today. Informational interviews. When you want to do something and you want to pivot, it is critical to at least be able to ask a few questions from people that have done this before. People that have done this before. There is nothing as powerful as asking questions from someone somewhere who has either done what you want to do or who has done something similar. Every time I've made a major pivot in my life, I've had to walk up to people or reach out to them on the internet. Yeah, I have done that so many times. LinkedIn, you won't believe it. I remember when I realized that I didn't have a particular skill. I'll tell you guys more about that later. That particular skill was something that I really didn't have. I felt I didn't. And then I reached out to someone that I knew was doing such a fantastic job of it online via LinkedIn. Today, we are amazing friends, and she is one of the most powerful mentors that I have. So when you're researching, do not freeze up to reach out. Do not say, they don't know me, they can't speak to me. They don't know me, I can't speak to them. I was on a call yesterday, and it's so amazing. It was a Grant Cardone call. And guess what? There was a guy who was sharing his story on that call who said, funny enough, Grant Cardone was trying to choose who to call on the, call to answer their questions. And he called this guy, I think his name was Toby or something. And this guy said, I found you on the internet in 2021, and I did everything in my power to make sure I got on board your program. And guess what? My life has been transformed. And do you know where this guy reached out to Grant Cardone from? a country called Nigeria. Unbelievable. And, Grant was like, I've never been to that country, but isn't it stoked that this guy reached out to me all the way from there? I know there's mixed multitude thoughts about who Grant Cardone is, but hey, that is one powerful way for you to reach out and find out from people who have been there, done that, about what you're about to do. I won't go more into those details. I'm not selling Grant Cardone, but I am also telling you that I'm a solid follower of him. I attend all his events that I can possibly do. He has another one in Las Vegas in a few weeks. But what I'm saying is, if you want to be someone, if you want to become someone, who did you look at? Who has done it before? That should be your informational interview. And then, if it's a job or a business that you want to transition into, it is important for you to study descriptions online. I know people who have come into sessions with me and have told me they've been looking for a job for 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months. And guess what? They do not even know what the market is saying regarding the role they want to get into. I mean, come on. And you want to get into it, but you don't know what is going on in that regard. It's different if you're just doing it as a side thing. I mean, sometimes I consult in my spare time, and when I do that, sometimes I look at it, I'm like, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do that? But if this is your goal and this is your one target and you need to accomplish this thing, it's important to take 30 minutes, go online, look for what people are looking for so that you are current. That way you can backtrack, take a look at what you have going for you, either for a business or personal. Then you do your market assessment and you do your gap identification. I'm looking at the chats. We have just 11 more minutes. I'm looking at the chat. Mindset holding me back. Oh, great. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Communication. Frustration communication. I would love us to talk about that further down. I really will. Eunice, please remind me if I don't. Remember, rebranding, pivot. There are some of you that feel that I am an introvert and I will forever be an introvert. And there are just some things that are not meant for me. There are some of you that are extroverts and you feel that whatever is out there is, certain things are not meant for you. I get it. But do you know that rebranding is something that is a continuous life activity? There was a time in my life you can't catch me in front of a camera, like talking on YouTube. You gotta be kidding me. I wouldn't do that. I would like, no. Give me anything else to do. Can you rebrand yourself? Yes. There's some materials we're going to share with you next week that you need to go through that can help you with your rebranding. It doesn't matter whether you're part of our community or not. It's okay. We're going to share those links in the video later on so that you can be able to download or just take those content and have a look at them in your planning and your working towards rebranding. Story, what is your story? Some of you know my story. Some of you know my story. Why? Because I shared it. Some of you know that I did not get to use a laptop I didn't get to use a computer until I was almost 30 years old. I think I've sang that song so many times. But guess what? That is the fire. That's part of my life. That part of my story is the fire that keeps me going every time I think about it. When I remember that I didn't know how to use a computer until almost 30 years old. And I got an internship, and this person says, "Oh, here is your details for your computer, Pamela, and just log in, and you see all the outstanding jobs there." And I looked at the device. Where the heck do I switch it on? I stood there for 10 minutes trying to figure out how to put on a computer. When it finally occurred to me that round big button on the big tower was the switch on button, and I pressed it and I got into it and I saw, oh my God, this is a graduate. I was a graduate, but I had never used a computer before. When I saw what had been hidden from me, my mind shifted. And suddenly I knew that I could never go back to that level of ignorance again. It made me begin to be on fire, to discover and learn and know more. And that's how I worked my way up in tech industry. From a junior to becoming a VP. I am saying to you today that if you take 2 minutes now, I want our sessions to be practical. I want them to be action immediately. No, you're not going to go and come back to do that homework. Now, think about your story. What in your life is propelling the desire in your heart? Because if you can't understand it, how can you tell it? How can you share it? How can people know what is driving you? So once again, I'm going to set the timer, 2 minutes. What is propelling you? What is your story? Take 2 minutes. You don't have to write it line for line. You just need to write the bullet points of how you are in this spot today, and you are having to deal with a pivot. So what is it in your story that's unique? Because your story is unique. 2 minutes. All right. 2 minutes is over. Right. For those of you that wrote it down, in writing your story, what did you discover? What did you discover? Your narrative is compelling. I tell you, there's nobody's narrative that is not compelling. After today, I want you to begin to look at what you've written and think about that story and think about how impacting it has been to you. And then how impacting it has been to the fact that you want to pivot. Now, the last stage on the framework I want to share with you is the ability to reach out. A lot of us are either working from home and buried into our laptops. I can tell you, I have been very guilty of that. Throughout the COVID years and what have you, like working from home has now taken a level of dependence as well on our intersociability skills. Whatever you want to do in this world, you have to understand that it has its own social element. We can't become anyone important in the cycle of life if we are stuck in a tunnel by ourselves. So I would encourage you to think about connections that you have today, not next week, today. Write them down. The communities that do what you want to do, are there any that are out there that don't cost a ton? Are there any that have free access? Join them. Research is something I've mentioned earlier today. It's a very powerful part of pivoting. The only thing I want to remind you of is if you want to pivot and you are constantly in the research paralysis stage, that's a term we use in product experience, then that is dangerous. Lean and quick. Your research should be lean and quick, if possible, time boxed. And experience. If you're one of those that are looking to get a job in another field, you're trying to transition to another field, you must be willing to gain experience. You must be willing to work for a period of time, taking either low pay or in some cases, no pay to get the experience that you need to transition. Okay, so I have just a minute left, but I want to make sure we go through this. I had a story that I was going to share, but we have run slightly out of time. Let's look at overcoming common pivot challenges. Remember that everyone starts somewhere, okay? Focus on continuous learning rather than perfection, because in your mind, some questions will be going through your mind. Even as I'm speaking, some questions are going through some of you's mind. And these questions, I wrote them down in my notes, questions that are going through, that could be going through your mind right now. How do I know if it's the right time to pivot? I'm afraid I'll fail. How do I handle the risk? How do I stay motivated through uncertainty? Because there will be uncertainty in your transition. Can this pivot really be done in a short time? For those of you who are beginning to work yourselves up for the 90-day challenge that is coming, it can. You can pivot. You can transition in 90 days. And that's what we're working you up to get to. Okay? How do I get clarity on which direction to pivot towards? Those are questions you might be thinking about. And I am saying to you now, the things I shared today, if you can follow that 4-step framework, you will be amazed at how prepared you will feel when you want to start. And how do I measure success in this new direction? We will be working on practical metrics, okay, that you can use to gauge your progress. And so I have a few success stories that I would have loved to share. As some of you can see that my slide is packed, but because of time, I'm going to just go quickly to the last slide that I have here. And that is, you need to trust your instincts, learn to test your ideas rapidly, stay persistent, and start small. I'm going to share Sarah's story with you guys later on, but for now, I want to take questions in the chats. Thank you so much for listening. Let's do the questions now. All right. Oh, great to see you, Zodiac Signs, today. Say Forex Brokers. Here, I prefer 8 p.m. Oh, is it 8 p.m. for you today? Well, thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the feedback. I can see transferable skills, critical thinking, flexibility, fast learning. Yes, thanks everybody who shared that they were actually do that. Frustration. I can't leave my current job. I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay. Some people think that the art of pivoting means you leave your job and you start something new without any backing. Have I done that before? Yes. And do I recommend it for people to do? Not unless you have certain things in place. It had always been my dream that when I get to a landmark age, I was going to stop working, take a break, and do some of the things I've always dreamt to do. And it took me 20 years working up to that. So if you are frustrated about the fact that you need to work in order to feed and live, but then you are concerned that your dream is just stagnant, I want to share a secret with you. If you spend 30 minutes a day doing anything for 5 years, you become an expert in that thing. So, if you have to work now and you're working, I want you to know that you can pivot. You can. It just requires discipline. When we started Brave Achievers, I was neck deep working in an organization. And I said to myself, Pamela, 30 minutes a day, maximum is what you're going to give this. If it turns to an hour, we have to revisit it and know that it's going to be an hour. Anything more than that, you're not going to do that. And for 6 months, I spent an hour, 30 minutes, an hour or 30 minutes, depending on which day of the week was. I think I gave myself an hour on Fridays and 30 minutes during the week. And then on Saturdays, I gave myself 4 hours. And that was how we birthed the organization. full 100% in at my work, but spending that 30-minute, 1 hour, come sun, rain, storm, snow, whatever. And I was so shocked at what I could do at the end of every week. Saturday mornings, I would wake up at 6 a.m. And by 10 a.m., when the kids start rolling in and all that, I would have put in so much work, I couldn't believe it. You don't have to quit your job. You just have to change your mindset and understand the metrics of focused working. Focused working, 30 minutes, 1 hour, it's unbelievable what you can do. I hope that helps you, say Forex brokers. Any other question there that you want me to look at, Eunice? Communication. All right, Cynthia says communication. I love that. And Cynthia, you're in the right place. It doesn't matter if communication is one of your challenges. I don't know whether you're an introvert or extrovert. If you feel free enough to share that in the chat, let's know. If you share that with me and share your email, we can actually send you content that is specific to that. But we're also going to put some up. The art of communication, it's an art, and it has some science to it. It's so integral to everything we do in life. And I love that you're saying this, Cynthia, because there was a time in my life that I thought that people always used to misunderstand me, blah, 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 until I took a 3-month course in England about listening. It was a listening course. And I'm trying to remember what prompted me taking that course. I was trying to change my role. And I felt that I wanted to be able to communicate better. And someone recommended the listening course. You won't believe how much it transformed my life. I was used to talking to people, to my husband, to people around me, and multitasking at the same time. During that course, I learned that when you want to talk to somebody, you needed to, when somebody is talking to you and you're on the computer, it's only standard courtesy to stop what you're doing and look at them in the eye and articulate. I didn't know that. I didn't think there was anything wrong in me continuing what I was doing and listening to you. I can hear you with the ears. Can't I use my eyes for something else? So when we think we know everything, there are certain things in life that if we would just learn these little tweaks and turns, it makes such a huge difference in how we relate with people. Okay, Cynthia? And guess what? I even learned something. I learned something else during that course. I learned, during that course, the difference between listening to respond and active listening. So I'll give you that. Go Google it. What's the difference between listening to respond and active listening? Okay? So there are many, many facets of communication. We can't go into all that today, but I hope that helps you, and I hope it gives you a springboard to begin to think about how you can actually work on this. Say Forex, your question, how do you pivot when you need to make very risky decisions, like quitting your job? Okay, so I'm going to say it. I said it the first time. I'm going to say it again. Please don't quit your job yet. Okay? Quitting your job is not a decision that you make without thinking it through. It's never meant to be like that. And that's why, for those of you who are on this call, if you have the opportunity, I recommend that you join our membership, because then you can go into the membership portal. It's just $1.99 to join our membership monthly. And then you can schedule time with one of our counselors and coaches, and then have a conversation. Quitting your job, no matter how frustrating it is, might not be the option now. But when you have someone who is in your corner, rooting for you, wanting you to succeed, listen to you, and hear you out, they might have a different vantage point to share with you. And just even the mentoring alone makes a job that seems very frustrating become bearable. I hope that answers your question. Eunice, I'm not hearing you, but I believe that we have just 3 more minutes to wrap up. How? What if I pivot in the wrong direction? That's the beauty of failing fast. If you pivot in the wrong direction, you are not the person who started the pivot by the time you find out you're in the wrong direction. And that makes it that you are a step ahead. Failure, and I repeat, failure is not the sign that you made the wrong decision. Deep dive. We're going to go a bit into that next week as well. I hope that helps. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. It's been fantastic. It's just hearing your thoughts, hearing the things that you want to share. There's something here that Cynthia shared. She said, I have a strong desire to succeed and the curiosity to see how far I can go. Love, passion, and interest. Okay, so I don't understand the second half of your comment or question, but I believe that you're sharing that you have a really strong desire to succeed and the curiosity to see how far you can go. And that is the most powerful ingredient you need on your journey. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up today by saying to everybody, we are getting ready for the 90-day challenge in April, starting April 1. All these sessions are to help us towards kickoff. I hope everything you wrote down today, you will be able to take time and reflect between now and our next meeting. Please, I look forward to hearing your stories on what reflection has done for you over the next 1 week. Have a wonderful week, and thank you for joining Reinvent to Rise.